Hey everybody, Griff Hamlin here. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to talk about what some might consider a beginning technique. I don't know that I would necessarily call it a beginning technique, but it's what I commonly call the blues in E pattern. And it's a very standard rhythm idea for playing the blues. So we're going to talk about the best way to do that, but I figured while we were at it, in case it is something that you already know and maybe you're looking for a little more, I've got some variations to go with it. These are common variations that just sound nice. It gets old just playing the exact same riff over and over and over again, so sometimes it's nice to throw in a little variation. Okay. Now the basic gist of this for a blues in E, which we are in, is the low E string and the second fret on the fifth string. And that's all we're going to hit, just those two. And we'll strike them on the beat 1 and on the and or of 1. The way that I like to count this sort of thing is in triplets. Blues is based around triplets. And I'm going to have another video all about triplets as well. But blues is based around triplets. So you want to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and what we're going to do is we're going to play on the 1 and the and we're going to rest on the and that's just kind of a feel thing for the blues. So it's going to sound something like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, now right now I'm not doing anything, but what we're going to do is on beats 2 and 4, 1 and 2, notice I'm going to put my third finger on the 4th fret, and it could be any finger, it could be your pinky if that feels better. I would not recommend sliding because you'll hear the slide, but I've got my third finger now on the 4th fret of the 5th string. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay? So you notice that again I'm striking on 1, muting on and, striking on or 2. 1 and 2 and 3. All right. When I get to the A, which is going to be the next chord in a blues, I'm going to now have the 5th string open, and I've got my first finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, and it's going to be the same pattern, except just with those two strings. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and Now when I get to the B chord, the 5 chord, things get a little bit tricky, and this is always a challenge because there's no open string involved. So I've got my first finger on the B here at the 2nd fret of the 5th string, and I've got my third finger. You could use your middle finger, I suppose, but it's kind of an awkward stretch. Believe it or not, I think it's easier with your third finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. Now what makes this work is that you'll notice my thumb is quite low in the back of the neck. And there's a trick you can do where if you just set your guitar flat on your lap and you put your thumb right in the middle, now as you turn your guitar over, see how my shoulder kind of drops and my elbow kind of drops, and everything does what it needs to do to facilitate that. And if you see, straight on, I'm kind of leaning over it a little bit. And that's totally okay. The better you get at this, the less you'll have to lean over. The other alternative is, to bring the guitar neck up really high, but of course on an electric with a cord sticking out of it, that doesn't work out so well. The main idea, though, is you need to get around it so that your wrist can drop and look nice and straight there, because now I can make that stretch with my pinky. Okay, so now my pinky is stretching out to that 6th fret. Well, if I have my thumb over the top, it's not happening. I can't physically, it's never going there. It's never going to happen in a million years. Okay, so I have to drop that thumb, and I have to drop the wrist, and probably my shoulder and my elbow and everything. Because eventually, we're going to go even one more fret, which you can do. It can be done if your technique is good. Okay, so that is always a big sticking point. People always have a hard time making that stretch. Lay your guitar flat, get your thumb in the middle of the back of the neck, and then rotate your guitar around and let your shoulder drop as need be, or bring the guitar up, put it on the other leg. If you put it on this leg, you know, I've seen people do it like this. Works great. It's actually pretty easy. So hold the guitar however you need to hold it to get that to work, okay? So now that you kind of got the idea of it, let me play it through slowly, and you'll be able to kind of see the tab, you know, and where I'm at. But of course we've got 4 bars. This is what we call a 12-bar blues. 4 bars of the 1 chord, which is the E. It's blues in E, so 1 is E. 2 bars of the 4 chord, which in this case is A. Back to 2 bars of the 1 chord, the 5 chord, the 4 chord, the 1 chord, and the 5 chord for 1 bar each. Okay? Not very complicated, but if you're not familiar with a 12-bar form, that might not be obvious. So let's play it through all the way. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so once you got that down, it's time to add a little bit of variation to it. And as I alluded to, what we're going to do is we're going to add one more note. So instead of what we had before, what we're going to do is we're going to have the 2nd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret, 4th fret. And of course on the A, you could slide it if you prefer, or use the pinky. And for the B, yep, this is a stretch. So if you can't do it, just play it the regular way on the B. Or add the stretch. All right, so you can add this. You don't have to add it every time, nor do you, like if you can't do it on the B chord, well don't add that extra note on the B chord, do it on the other 2. That'll give you a little bit of natural variety anyway. You don't necessarily want to play this exactly the same way every time. The whole idea is that it's a variation, so you don't necessarily want to use it every time. But if you did, it would go a little something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so you can see that adds a little bit of interest to it, and it's just a little bit more exciting. Again, that's a pretty easy thing to change, and you don't necessarily want to do it every time. But there's one thing that we can add also that adds even a little bit more interest, but it's a little bit more difficult. So if you're brand new to this, this might be a little bit of a challenge. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to, you know, since we're basically playing an E chord, we're going to kind of take that E7. I usually use my middle finger for this, and I'm basically going to bar an A, which is the 2nd fret across the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. So you see I just lay my middle finger flat, and then I go to my E7, which is just my first finger on the first fret of the third string. And so I've got the open second and fourth. Now you can do this either with the regular way, and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or we can do it with the variation 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now one little thing I got to hip you to is what I call sloughing. That's my fancy scientific term for the little half a beat right before you got to do something hard. For example, make this chord change. Okay, so a lot of times we kind of slough that. It kind of goes away. And what I mean is, if I'm really precise, 1 and 2 and 3 and I actually strike both of those, and then I strike the bar and the chord, and then I have to get back. There's a whole lot going on right there. On the other hand, if I kind of slough 1 and 2, 3, you see what here I'm doing here is my right hand just sort of lays down on the strings, and I just sort of hit the strings, but I'm kind of in process of moving. 4, 1. And maybe I don't get back there in time. Again, you see I'm just kind of sloughing it. My fingers may not make it, but as long as my palm is on the strings, it's probably okay. So if I speed it up, 1, 2, 3, 4. That one right before I'm going to make the chord, I'm definitely sloughing. The next one I can usually make, but you may or may not. When I get up to the A, I'm almost definitely going to slough that one and just hit the A string with a palm, because now I have to get all the way up to the 7th fret for the A. I can't do this down in open position. So I'm going to bar at the 7th fret with my third finger, and then I'm going to have a little A7 little chord here, which is a bar on the 5th fret, again across the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings, but I'm going to add my middle finger to the 6th fret, which is part of an A7. So I have A. Notice I'm just going to hit that open A string most of the time. Even though that's not technically the riff, that's all I need to get the point across. And right after that, I might also only hit the open string. Because I simply can't get back there fast enough. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. This idea of sloughing or just hitting an open string, it's not an uncommon thing at all. It actually happens quite a bit. And it allows you to take, portions of riffs, or ideas and kind of put them together, even if you can't quite make it. It may be physically impossible. It may even sound bad. A lot of times it actually sounds not as good if you don't slough stuff. It just sounds kind of awkward. And so don't be afraid to modify that, whatever that little beat is right before a cool idea and right after. You have to use your ear, obviously, to be the judge, but it's not an uncommon thing to do, okay? Now, for the B chord, there's really no option here. I could go up to the 9th fret and do that just like I did with the A, but it would be ridiculously hard to do that and then get back to here. So I'm not even going to try, to be honest. I'm just going to say, okay, well, since the 5 chord is really hard and it would really not make sense, I just won't do it there, and that'll be the variation. Okay, so again, you don't have to always do this. But I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it. Aside from the 5 chord, I'm going to do it on every single measure. But if I were you and I were playing with somebody, and this happens a lot, you know, you're playing with somebody and you say, okay, well, just play blues in E and I'll solo over it. And so it's your turn to play the blues in E. These are some nice things that you can do to that blues in E. Okay, so again, if I was going to play it with, I'm going to have both my 7th. This is actually called the flat 7th of the scale, so I call this the 7th variation, and the little chord variation there, the little chord. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in on every single measure. So maybe a little more than you'd want to use in the real world, but it's good practice this way. All right. So play it along with me. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and there you have it. So you have the basic blues in E riff. You have what I call the 7th variation, where we're adding in the flat 7th of the chord, that one extra note, and you have a little, chord variation to go with it. So between those 3, you have actually quite a bit of variety that you can play whenever it's, just you and a friend, and you're just playing, blues in E, and somebody's taking a solo. This gives you some options. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that lesson. Hope you got something out of it, and I will talk to you soon.